Morning. As you can see, it was quite a week around here this last week. There was a lot of fun, a lot of learning about Jesus, and a lot of pie in the face of some special people on staff and a certain missionary. It was a great week with the kids, and just a fantastic time for them to grow. And if you had kids here, I'm sure you heard all about it. We're so glad you're here. Let's stand and let's worship God together. Let's sing it out. I was buried beneath my shame. Who could carry that kind of weight? He was my tomb till I met you. I was breathing but not alive. All my failures I tried to hide. He was my tomb till I met you. You called my name and I ran out of that grave. Out of the darkness to your glorious day. You called my name and I ran out of that grave. Out of the darkness to your glorious day. See your mercy. Now your mercy has saved my soul. Now your freedom is all that I know. The old man knew Jesus when I met you. When you called my name and I ran out of that grave. Out of the darkness to your glorious day. You called my name and I ran out of that grave. Out of the darkness to your glorious day. I needed rescue, my sin was heavy, my chains break at the weight of your glory. I needed shelter, I was an orphan, now you call me a citizen of heaven. When I was broken, you were my healing, and your love is the air that I'm breathing. I have a future, my eyes are open, 'cause when you call my name, I ran out of that grave. Out of the darkness to your glorious day. You called my name and I ran out of that grave. Out of the darkness to your glorious day.
I saw Satan fall like lightning. I saw darkness run for cover. But the miracle that I just can't get over.
Father, thank you for the reminder that you are always the same, that you are unchanging. Thank you that your mercies are new every day and your faithfulness is great to us. We come before you now asking that as we open your word, that you would open our hearts and minds. That as we go from this place, we would be better able to serve you. We ask this in Jesus' name. Amen. Thank you. You may be seated.
Good morning, Crestview. Wow, what an evening last night here in town, huh? That was quite a storm. Some of you, I know, never did lose power, and you're doing just fine. Some of you did for a little bit, didn't sleep well. Maybe some of you got ready this morning without power, it shows, I can tell. Or some of you, sorry. We love you anyway. No, I'm glad you're here, even with that, and whatever happened, if you have some limbs down and want some help, let me know. Maybe we can grab some people to come help. And if you want to help, let me know. There might be some others that we could connect you with to help with that. So I'm glad that you guys are here. Hey, crestview.info is where you can go, crestview.info, especially if you're new with us this morning. I'm glad that you are here. There's a place on this. It's a website. You can just go there on your phone right now. You can fill out a connection card. It helps us get to know you and connect with you. There's also a place where you can leave a prayer request. We can be praying for you throughout the week. There's a place where you can give. There's a place where you can find out what's coming up, all the cool things that are going on at Crestview and what's coming up. And we have some cool camps with our kiddos coming up here at the church, but also our junior high and high school will be going away this summer to some camps. So there's going to be some opportunities for you to get involved with that and to help them out and be a part of that with them. Next week, though, here's one. Next Sunday is Father's Day, and we're going to have just some cool cars parked out front. Little car show going on here at Crestview and some donuts. So invite somebody, come out, be a part of this with us. Just hang a little bit and get to know somebody. It'll be a fun morning, I know that. So next Sunday, be here with us. So we are starting a new series today called The Summer on the Mount, talking about the Sermon on the Mount with Jesus. But we're going to spend the summer doing this. Now, this isn't something that we're just starting today. We actually started this sermon way back before Easter. So before Easter, we did a series of sermons leading up to Easter about the Beatitudes. And that's kind of the introduction of the Sermon on the Mount. And if you missed that, go back and listen to some of that. It'll help you catch up to where Jesus is at in the sermon. Now, to catch us up on this idea, it's about 30 AD, and Jesus is beginning his public ministry. He has done a few things leading up to this, but this is kind of the benchmark, the sermon that he gave to kick it all off. And he has gathered some followers, and this is in Matthew chapters 5, 6, and 7 is where we're going to be throughout the summer. Today, Matthew chapter 5, but he has stirred up some things in his time. And there is a group of people that has started to follow Jesus. And this is a group of people that didn't fit with the religious section, all the religion that was going on, and they just weren't good at some of the religious type of things. And the Pharisees were the leaders of that religion. And they had a list of rules, and a lot of rules, things you should do, things you shouldn't do. And there was a group of people that they were just tough to get to on this. Maybe they didn't follow the rules. Maybe they were outcasts because they were sinners. There was a different set of circumstances for them. And Jesus started to gather these. These were the sad people, the hurt people, the broken, the mental, the emotional people. And they just kind of gathered around Jesus. And leading up to chapter 5, they were asking this question: who is this dude? Is he a rabbi? Is he a carpenter? Is he a teacher? Is he a healer? Because he has done all of these things. And they're trying to understand who Jesus is because they want to follow him more. So he goes on a mountainside, and he actually sits down. It says it this way in chapter 5, verse 1. Seeing the crowds, the people that had started following him, he went to the mountain, and he sat down, and his disciples came to him. So all these people were ready to learn. They wanted to learn what Jesus was going to teach them. And he starts to teach them. He sits down to teach. And when he sits, he shares with them the Beatitudes. And a lot of them needed to hear that. Blessed are you who... And he was addressing these people, the sad, the hurt, the broken, the emotional. He was addressing them by saying, blessed are you. and it pulls them in. But yet at the same time, these words from Jesus are tough. They're confusing, but they're revolutionary at the time. That's why they're confusing to them. It's not just a list of things, although it kind of sounds like it, but it's not really. They're confusing to us in the context of then trying to understand them today, because we read the Sermon on the Mount like a list of rules. You should do this, you shouldn't do these things. These are bad, these are good. And we take this concept, and I think a lot of people then understood it that way because they were understanding it from the Old Testament. And Jesus was not just teaching a list of religious rules. He was teaching them something completely different. What they were after, what we are after, is human dignity, justice. We would like equality, or at least fairness in our world, mercy, peace. How about progress? What if we all could flourish? What if there would be something cool about that? But I think we strive at times to do it without God. We try and do this on our own, dig a little deeper, try a little harder, and I've learned over time I mess up when I try and do it on my own. I can't do that, and when I look at a list of rules, it just makes me feel guilty about it, and I think this is where a lot of people were and still are, and Jesus says, I can give all this to you. If you follow what I'm teaching you, and I can help you get through this. So here's the sermon, not a list of do's and don'ts. And it sounds confusing to us, and if you read the Sermon on the Mount this way, you'll get, like I have many times, where I walk away going, I don't know what to do with that. I don't know what to do with what Jesus just said. It's confusing to me. But if I try and get into where he's coming from, it makes a little more sense. It's a new way of living. And this is what he teaches them. So we're going to jump to, not the middle of the sermon, but a little ways in. So after the Beatitudes, chapter 5, verse 13, this is where Jesus goes with this concept. The salt and light is what it's titled here. He says, you are the salt of the earth. But if salt has lost its taste, how shall it be salty again? It is no longer good for anything except to be thrown out and trampled under people's feet. You are the light of the world. A city on a hill cannot be hidden, nor do people light a lamp and put it under a basket, but on a stand, and it gives light to all in the house. In the same way, let your light shine before others, so that they may see your good works and give glory to your Father in heaven. Now, Jesus does something amazing here. I love the way Jesus teaches, because he brings everyday, easy things to understand into the teaching, where we can say, I get that. It was that way 2,000 years ago, and it's still that way for us today. This illustration, two common things that describe the world around us and how we are to live. Not just what we do and don't do, but how we're to live. Salt and light. So salt, let's unpack this a little bit and understand it. Salt back then was very, very valuable. I think it is still very valuable. It's just not as expensive as it used to be. It's still pretty cheap for us to come by. But back then, it was not only valuable, it was expensive as well. Roman soldiers oftentimes would get paid with salt. Can you imagine that after a hard day of work, your employer comes to you and says, here you go, and they hand you some salt, and like, what's this for? I got a lot of that at home. It wouldn't be good for us in that state, but they would take it. They would love to have salt. The Greeks considered it to be divine. If you had it, it was a symbol of wealth because you had more of that. Leviticus, if we go back in the Old Testament to try and understand salt, in chapter 2 of Leviticus describes some of the laws and how we are to worship, how we are to come into the church or the temple back then. And it actually says, when you bring in your offering, do not take out the salt. Now, they wouldn't bring offerings maybe like we do as today, online or, the temple.org, and you could give that way. It wasn't that like that. They would bring offerings, and it wasn't always just finances. It might be grain. It might be other things that they'd bring in, and the salt would be there as a preservative, and it was told to them, don't take the salt out. We need that salt to continue to preserve your gift. Or bring salt. That would be a great offering to give at that time. So as Jesus teaches this, a lot of them would understand what that meant. Salt is valuable. But what did it really mean? What was Jesus really trying to teach us? So different commentaries, different people, different ideas. One of them that I read this week said it might be the color. The color of salt is white, and that equaled purity then. So, as pure as the snow, the whiteness of that offered that. What about flavoring? It provides, have you ever eaten food without flavor? No salt added, nothing there to pull out the flavor of whatever it is you're eating. Not that you want it to be salty, but salt actually enhances that and brings out good flavor. Too much of it, and in the wrong place, it hurts as well. If you have an open wound, you don't want to pour salt into that because it would hurt. So there's people saying, well, maybe Christians need to, add flavor to the world, or maybe we need to be the voice in the world around us, and we need to provide that pain to show off that sin, to tell them when they're sinning and point that out to them. Maybe it's that we're to provide thirst, because when you have too much salt, you get thirsty. So maybe we are to be salt so that we make the world around us thirsty for who God is. I really think, though, when I stop and think about the time period and maybe where Jesus is going with this, all of that maybe makes sense in context at times, but to me it's a preservative. We don't use it that way anymore. We have refrigerators and deep freezes, and we can preserve our food in a different way. But then salt was used as a preservative. So for us to preserve the gospel, the message, what Jesus is trying to teach us, what God has in store for us, to keep out the decay, the bad things in the world, we need something to preserve what he's trying to teach us. So what about light? If that's where salt is at, and Jesus then says, you are the light of the world, the original language of this, when Jesus said light, it was used with the concept as a beacon. But they didn't have beacons back then, but he used it with the concept of a city on a hill. And a city on a hill is supposed to be seen for miles because of light. I think of it as a lighthouse, even though there might not have been lighthouses in the time of Jesus. It's that concept of a beacon. And a lighthouse does a couple different things to ships that are out on the sea. This is before modern technology, right? So that a lighthouse would say there's danger. We're not the ocean. We're not water. If you keep going towards us, you're going to run into shore. Stop. Or if you're stuck out at sea and you don't know where you're at and they were lost, that beacon would be hope. There's land. I can see the light. There's something there. We need to head that direction. So light does a couple different things. It reveals danger or bad things, but it also reveals hope or good things. See, light is not good for you if you're trying to cover something up. If you're trying to hide something, darkness is what you want. You don't want it to come out. You don't want anybody to know what you've done or what you are doing. Sin is hidden in darkness, and when light is shined on it, it reveals bad things. But light is good if you're trying to do the right thing. If you're trying to walk in the right direction, you want that light to help you get there. Jesus said, if salt loses its saltiness, then what? Well, Jesus would have known this. And this is an interesting thing. I did just a little research. I'm not a chemist, just so all of you know. I'm not that smart. But I did just a little research to find out this week that if salt loses its saltiness, it's nothing. It's not that it becomes a rock. Salt is either salt or nothing. There's nothing there. It can't lose its saltiness. If it loses its saltiness, it's just nothing. It's just been dissolved. So I think where Jesus was going with this is if salt loses its purity, if salt loses its effectiveness to preserve, if it becomes impure and you can't use it for that purpose anymore, they take it. It's still salt. There's still something there, but they just throw it on the ground because they can't use it for anything else. Or it dissolves. It becomes diluted. If you put salt in water, it just dilutes itself and you can't see it. The water is salty, but if that water is gone, the salt is gone as well. It's useless. Just like Jesus has said, it can't be used again. And I think we get there. We either get diluted by the world around us or our sin and we're useless, or we become impure because of our sin and we're useless. If you've ever done this, if you've ever walked through some sin in your life, you could see how much time and it takes up in your life, and you're not productive in other areas because you're concentrating on that. It's hard, and we become useless if we're not preserving righteousness. If we're not just sinning, but we're caught in that sin. We're living in that sin. I believe we've all sinned. We've all been there, but to live in it, to accept it and say, this isn't wrong. I'm good with this. You become useless then to the world around you. And Jesus said this as well, your light that's in you, don't hide it. The light that's in you is not meant to be hidden. It's to be seen. It's to show. It's to help you. Let your light shine. Don't try and hide it. It's not to point out somebody else's wrongs. It's to be seen. So last night when power was flickering on and off for us, it never went out for us, but I gathered a couple things. I grabbed a flashlight and we had a lantern. It's just something we have. So I had a flashlight and a lantern. And a flashlight is used to point at something, a directional thing. We could see where we're walking. We can do that. But the lantern is used just to set in a room. And the lantern lights up the whole room so that we can see everything that's going on. And a flashlight you point at, and it helps you get from one spot to another. The goal for us was not to have a light so that we could say, oh, wow, look at that light. That's amazing light. It was so that if the power did go out for us, we could see everything else. We could see the other things around us, and it would help us continue on with our evening. Not for us when we shine our light, but for God. It's not for people to look at us and say, wow, look at us, the light. It's to say, look at God through us. I like this quote. I've used this quote before. Janie Cheney once said it this way: celebrity is being known by strangers. To be a celebrity is to be known by people who don't know you. Christians are to be known by God. Celebrity is walking in the spotlight, the only place where tinsel can glitter. But Christians walk in the light, and rather than being seen, we see. So, our saltiness is there to enhance the flavors of the world around us, to make that better, and to preserve what God has given us, to help us move there. The light is not to say, look at me and the light, but it's to help others see the good news of God and what he is doing. It's not about us. It's to permeate other things around us. I caught this through this passage. You don't have to announce it. Salt and light doesn't announce itself. A salt doesn't have to say, hey, I'm salty. You just take a bite of something and you'll know that's salty. Or there's no salt in that and it tastes horrible. Light doesn't have to say, look at me, I'm light. Light just is, and it shows. And pride, it's not an attribute of salt and light. You just are. That's just who you are. Salt and light. We're not to be, if we are salt and light, that doesn't mean we're judge and jury of somebody else. It doesn't mean we're a laser light hurting and pinpointing other people's faults and sins. We're not the punisher of them, pouring salt in it when they're hurting. We are to preserve and to illuminate. That's what salt and light does. And catch this as well. Jesus said it this way: you are salt of the earth. You are the light of the world. It's not an option. He does not say, oh, you can be. You have great potential to be salt and light. If you work really hard at it and you follow all these rules, you can really do it. No, you just are. He says that you are. And if you've trusted him with your salvation, if you've trusted him with who you are salt and light. Keep working in that. Keep walking in that. Here's the struggle for me, and this is where I'm at with this one. In Galatians, so Paul writes to a church in Galatia later, and I think he nails something here that I struggle with on this. He says it this way in chapter 6, verse 9, and let us not grow weary in doing good, for in due season we will reap if we don't give up. I don't want to say that I'm doing good. This isn't the point in that, but I do want to say I think there are times we get tired. Any of you get weary? You just get tired of it? Do you ever wish I wish I could just get away with something? Do I have to keep doing this? This is tough. And maybe you've stumbled. Maybe you've made some mistakes. Maybe you've sinned. Maybe you've lived in it for too long. Maybe you need to address something. Have you grown weary? Have you sinned in this? Have you made some mistakes? Does it mean you've lost your saltiness then? That you're not a light anymore? Well, I think there are times that we lose our influence for sure. When that happens, it's distracting. We become not as useful as we could be, or we can become useless. So what do you do about it? Well, I think the first step is confession. I think you need to shine some light on it. Whatever it is that you're walking through and struggling with, shine some light on it. Open that up. Don't try and hide it. Don't try and cover it up. Like Jesus said, let it out. Now, you might not go and tell everybody, but you have to tell somebody. The lie of Satan, I think, is that when you sin, you lose your saltiness and light. Well, there's still a lot of teaching in here about grace. There's still a lot of teaching in here about what Jesus has done for you and that you can be forgiven. Now, there are consequences to everything that you do, but in that, I think you can grow. And there's pain to sin, and this is tough. And so saltiness, I think the effect of it can come and go through our lives. But I believe in the concept of grace and what Jesus can give to you, but you have to shine some light on it. You have to confess it, and you have to walk away from that. Here's the danger. We can become deluded by the world around us and say, well, that's not really a sin. That's really not a bad thing, but it is, according to what we're taught. So don't let the world dilute you and let sin become acceptable in your life. Then you will be impure. Then you will be ineffective in what Jesus wants us to do. There won't be any way to regain that saltiness, but you're still here. You can still do it. There's still a chance. Let that light shine, and let's be that for others. I'm going to ask the band to come up, and as the band comes up, I'm going to challenge you in this. As they make their way to the stage and we get ready to continue in our service, maybe it is for you. I'm not going to say that I can help you because I know everything and I'm good at all of this and I'm perfect and everything. I'm absolutely not. In fact, the reason I think I can help you is because I'm one of you, and I've either walked through it or I am, and we can walk together. What is it, though, that you need to? And maybe it's not me that you need to bring your confession to. It might be somebody else. What is it, though, that you have lost some of that with and you need to get back to? Some saltiness or some light to the people around you to help them. I'm going to challenge you in that. What is it for you that you need to do? If you would, let's stand together. Let's continue in our service and sing about what we can bring to Jesus for that. Let's sing together.
Have you come to
morning. We're so glad you're here with us today. So I brought this 1-year chronological Bible with me this morning. It sits on my desk, and if being a key word, I read it every day. Takes me through the whole Bible in a year, in historical order, which is kind of cool for a historical history nerd like me. I stole it from my wife several years ago. She says I stole it, which is interesting because when I take her stuff, it's stealing. When she takes my stuff, it's something else. But that's probably not the question we should ponder this morning. Maybe ever, actually. So over time, though, I've learned a couple things from this book and in reading it, attempting to read it consistently over the years. The first of those is that God always provides. Now, that provision may not come at the time we want or the way we want or how we want, but his provision is consistent. It's in mental, physical, spiritual, emotional ways, and over time, it's true. Now, when God provides for us and we, in faith and trust, acknowledge that provision, he asks us to give back to him. That's the first thing that we do at this point in our service today, is take a moment to recognize God's provision and, in faith, share back with him so that the work of the kingdom is furthered here in Manhattan and around the world. You can do that in a couple of ways every week here at Crestview. The first is crestview.info/give, not temple.org. Is that what you said earlier? No? Yeah. Nobody else was listening to that, thankfully. crestview.info/give if you want to give online. There are boxes at the back. You can mail your check to the church, or you can drop it off at the church office. The second thing that is consistent in this book to me is that God's timing is always perfect. Throughout history, victories were won, kings were crowned, kings were deposed, families were healed, people were brought back to forgiveness and reconciliation. A path was created in God's perfect timing that we could come to know him through this book and, more importantly, through the work of Christ on the cross. And that's the second thing that we celebrate this morning. Now, we do that here at Crestview with cups of bread and juice that you can find at the back. The bottom cup is the piece of bread representing Christ's body, which was broken for us. The top cup is juice, which is the act of atonement, the forgiveness of sin that the Bible required because we had sinned, right? The Bible said there must be a sacrifice, there must be atonement. In God's perfect timing, Jesus paid that price for us on the cross. And the significant part of that, it's perfect timing historically in terms of when it happened in the Bible. It's also perfect timing for when it happens for each of us individually and specifically when we choose to follow Christ. And that is what we celebrate this morning in the act of communion. Please pray with me. God, we are grateful always that you provide for us, whether it's in the midst of a storm, whether it's in our daily needs, that your provision is consistent and specific and exactly when we need it. We're also, Father, beyond grateful that you, in your infinite wisdom, at a time when we were still sinners and very much in need of a Savior, sent your Son to die on a cross for us. We ask that you would call our hearts to you, help us to reflect on those truths this morning at this time. In your name we pray, amen.
My Jesus, I love thee. I know thou art mine. For thee all authorities of sin shelter. I wasn't